The starship's celestial throne moved through the darkness of space like a silver knife cutting through black water. It was one of the largest ships in the galactic noble fleet. Inside its metal walls lived over 2,000 people. Some were important. Most were not. Commander Lyra Vance stood on the observation deck and looked at the stars. She was tall with sharp eyes and dark hair pulled back tight. Her uniform was white and gold, the colors of the noble class. Every button was polished. Every medal was in its proper place. She looked like a woman who had never known dirt or sweat or hunger in her entire life, and she had not. Lyra was the daughter of Admiral Marcus Vance, one of the greatest military leaders humanity had ever produced. Before the Ascended came and conquered Earth, her family had been rich and powerful. After the conquest, they became even more powerful. The Vance family learned to serve their new masters well. They became the bridge between humanity and the alien rulers. For this, they were rewarded with ships, titles, and respect. Lyra had grown up believing she was better than most humans. Not because she was cruel. She simply did not think about the people below her station. They existed like furniture, like the walls, like the air she breathed. They were there, but she did not truly see them. 30 floors below the observation deck, in the hot and noisy belly of the ship, a man named Daniel Cole pushed a cleaning cart through a narrow corridor. He wore a gray jumpsuit. It was old and stained with engine grease. His boots were worn thin at the soles. His hair was messy, and his face was covered with a short beard that made him look tired and ordinary. Daniel stopped his cart near a plasma conduit and began to clean it. The conduit was burning hot, but he did not complain. He never complained. In the 3 months he had worked on this ship, nobody had ever heard him raise his voice. He did his job. He ate his meals alone. He slept in a small room with 5 other workers. He was invisible. That was exactly what he wanted. As Daniel cleaned, his eyes moved in ways that did not match his boring task. He watched the guards as they walked past. He counted their steps. He noted the rhythm of the security cameras as they turned left, then right, then left again. He observed which doors had heavy locks and which ones did not. His hands moved with the rag, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. A loud voice broke his concentration. "Move aside, deckhand." Daniel stepped back quickly. A group of officers walked through the corridor. Their uniforms were bright. Their faces were proud. In the middle of them walked Commander Lyra Vance. She was on her way to inspect the lower engineering sections. It was a duty she hated, but her father had ordered her to know every part of any ship she commanded. So here she was, walking through the dirty halls where the common workers lived and worked. Lyra did not look at Daniel as she passed. He was just a gray shape in the corner of her vision. Another servant. Another nobody. But one of her attendants, a young officer named Peters, was not watching where he was going. He bumped hard into Daniel's cleaning cart. A tray of rations that Daniel had been saving for his dinner fell to the floor. Food scattered everywhere. Peters looked down at the mess. Then he looked at Daniel. "Clean that up," Peters said. He did not apologize. He did not even slow down. Lyra kept walking. She heard the commotion behind her, but did not turn around. Why would she? It was just a deckhand and some spilled food. It meant nothing to her. Daniel knelt on the floor and began to pick up the food. His face showed no anger. His hands were steady. A passing worker looked at him with pity. "Bad luck, friend," the worker said. Daniel just nodded and kept cleaning. But as he worked, he allowed himself one quick glance at the commander's back as she disappeared around the corner. He studied the way she walked, the way she held her shoulders, the weapon at her hip, the distance between her and her guards. He had been watching her for 3 months now, learning her patterns. understanding who she really was beneath all that pride and polish. His mission was simple: observe, report, determine if Commander Lyra Vance was like the rest of her family, determine if she had sold her humanity completely to the Ascended, or if somewhere deep inside her a spark of something real still existed. So far, Daniel was not impressed. He finished cleaning the floor and stood up. His dinner was ruined, but he would survive. He had survived much worse than missed meals. Daniel Cole pushed his cart down the corridor and returned to his work. To anyone watching, he was just a tired man doing a boring job. But behind his calm eyes, a trained soldier was always thinking, always planning, always waiting. The celestial throne continued its journey through the stars. It was heading to Nexus Station, where a great diplomatic meeting would take place. Representatives from 100 conquered worlds would gather before the Ascended. They would bow. They would speak pretty words. They would pretend that being slaves was the same as being free. Lyra Vance would represent her family at this meeting. She would wear her finest uniform. She would speak with confidence and grace. She would make her father proud. She had no idea that everything was about to change. In the ancient hall of Nexus Station, there was a weapon. It was called the Blade of Sovereignty. For 3,000 years, it had stood on its pedestal, untouched and unmoved. The Ascended said it could only be lifted by someone truly worthy. Thousands had tried. Thousands had failed. The blade was waiting, and so was Daniel Cole. He returned to his small room that night and sat on his hard bed. His roommates were already sleeping. The room smelled of sweat and metal and recycled air. Through the thin walls, he could hear the great engines of the ship humming their endless song. Daniel reached under his mattress and pulled out a small device. It looked like a simple music player, but it was not. He pressed a button, and a soft blue light glowed in the darkness. "Report," a voice whispered from the device. "The commander is cold," Daniel said quietly. "She does not see the people around her. She walks through the world like everyone else is a ghost." "And your assessment?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the way Lyra had not even turned when her officer knocked his food to the floor. He thought about her proud face and her polished medals, but he also thought about something else. Something small. When Peters had bumped into him, Daniel had seen Lyra's hand move. Just slightly. Just for a moment. Like she was about to turn around. Like she was about to say something. She had not. But the hand had moved. "Uncertain," Daniel finally said. "I need more time. You have 3 days. The summit begins soon. We need to know if she is one of us or one of them." The light faded. Daniel hid the device and lay back on his bed. 3 days to understand a woman who had never been taught to feel. 3 days to find out if the daughter of Admiral Marcus Vance had a heart. Daniel closed his eyes, but he did not sleep for a long time. Somewhere above him, 30 floors up, Commander Lyra Vance was probably drinking expensive wine and talking about politics with other noble officers. She had no idea that a ghost was watching her. She had no idea that the galaxy was about to break apart. And she had no idea that a simple deckhand in a gray jumpsuit was going to change her life forever. Nexus Station was the largest structure ever built by any species in the known galaxy. It floated in the empty space between 3 star systems, a massive wheel of metal and light that could be seen from millions of miles away. Over 50 million beings lived on the station. They came from hundreds of different worlds, all of them conquered, all of them serving the Ascended. The celestial throne docked at the station on the morning of the summit. Commander Lyra Vance stood at the front of her delegation, her white and gold uniform perfect, her face calm and controlled. Behind her stood 20 officers and guards. Behind them, invisible and unimportant, walked the servants who would carry bags and clean rooms and do all the work that noble people did not do. Daniel Cole was among them. He carried a heavy case of supplies on his shoulder. His gray jumpsuit was clean today, but still plain, still forgettable. He walked with his head down and his eyes on the floor, just like every other servant. But beneath his lowered gaze, he was studying everything. The station was beautiful and terrifying. The walls were made of crystal that had been grown, not built. Light moved through them like blood through veins. The air smelled of flowers that did not exist on any human world. And everywhere, standing like statues of living glass, were the Ascended. They were tall, taller than any human. Their bodies were made of something that looked like crystal but moved like flesh. Light pulsed inside them, changing colors as they moved. They had no faces that humans could read, no eyes that humans could meet. They simply were ancient, powerful, patient. Daniel had seen the Ascended before, but he never got used to them. No human did. They were the rulers of the galaxy. They had conquered Earth 200 years ago, when humanity was just beginning to reach for the stars. The war had lasted only 6 months. Humanity had never had a chance. Now humans served. Some, like the Vance family, served with pride and were rewarded. Others served with secret hatred in their hearts and dreamed of freedom. Daniel was one of the dreamers. The delegation moved through the station toward the Grand Hall, where the summit would take place. Lyra walked at the front, her boots clicking on the crystal floor. She did not look nervous. She'd been trained for moments like this since she was a child. She knew how to stand, how to speak, how to bow just enough to show respect without showing weakness. The Grand Hall was enormous. The ceiling was so high that clouds formed near the top, soft white clouds that drifted slowly in the artificial sky. Thousands of beings filled the hall. There were creatures with scales and creatures with fur. There were beings made of light and beings made of shadow. And there were humans scattered among them. Small and soft and breakable. At the center of the hall, on a pedestal of black stone, stood the blade of sovereignty. Daniel saw it and felt his breath catch in his chest. He had read about the blade. He had studied pictures and reports. But nothing had prepared him for seeing it in person. It was beautiful. The metal was dark, darker than any night. But inside that darkness, there were stars. Actual stars, burning with tiny lights, as if someone had captured a piece of the galaxy and forged it into a weapon. The handle was wrapped in something that looked like leather, but was probably the skin of some creature that had died 1,000,000 years ago. The blade was singing, not out loud, not in any way that ears could hear. But Daniel felt it in his bones, in his blood, in the deep quiet part of his mind where instinct lived. The blade was alive, and it was waiting. For 3,000 years, the Ascended had used the blade as proof of their right to rule. They said it could only be lifted by someone worthy, someone who deserved to lead. Since no one had ever lifted it, the Ascended claimed this proved they were the only worthy rulers in the galaxy. Daniel thought that was nonsense. But he also wondered what would happen if someone did lift it. Would the Ascended keep their word? Would they give up their power? He doubted it. The summit began with speeches. Many, many speeches. Representatives from conquered worlds stood before the Ascended and spoke words of thanks and loyalty. Daniel stood in the back with the other servants and tried not to fall asleep, but he kept his eyes on Lyra. She sat near the front, with the other human nobles. Her face was calm and polished, like a statue. She clapped when she was supposed to clap. She nodded when she was supposed to nod. She was perfect, and she looked bored. Daniel noticed the small signs. The way her fingers tapped against her leg. The way her eyes drifted toward the windows where stars burned in the endless night. The way she took a slow breath whenever another speaker began another long and pointless speech. She was pretending. She was playing a role. And some small part of her hated it. This was interesting. The summit continued for hours. Finally, the main event arrived. The Ascended invited any being who wished to try lifting the blade to step forward. One by one, they came. A warrior from a lizard-like species grabbed the handle and pulled with all his strength. The blade did not move. A being made of pure energy wrapped itself around the weapon and tried to lift it with its mind. Nothing happened. A human general, old and proud and covered with medals, placed his hands on the handle and strained until his face turned red. The blade stayed exactly where it was. The Ascended watched without expression. Light pulsed inside their crystal bodies, and Daniel could not tell if they were amused or bored or something else entirely. The ceremony ended. The summit would continue the next day. Everyone began to leave the grand hall, moving toward their quarters, their ships, their private places where they could finally relax. Daniel was helping to carry equipment back to the celestial throne when the first explosion hit. The floor shook. The crystal walls cracked. Alarms began to scream in a dozen different languages. People ran in every direction, pushing and shoving and crying out in fear. Daniel dropped his equipment and moved toward the nearest wall, getting out of the stampede. His heart was beating fast, but his mind was calm. This was what he was trained for. This was what he did. He looked for Lyra and found her near the entrance to a side corridor. She was shouting orders to her guards, trying to maintain control. But the chaos was too much. People were pushing past her. Her guards were scattered. And then the second explosion hit much closer this time. The corridor collapsed. Smoke and dust filled the air. Daniel lost sight of Lyra for a moment, and when the dust cleared, he saw that she was now separated from her guards. She was alone in a small section of the corridor, cut off by fallen debris on both sides, and she was not alone. 3 figures emerged from the smoke. They wore black armor and carried heavy weapons. Their faces were covered by helmets that hid all features. They moved like soldiers, like killers, like men who knew exactly what they were doing. Daniel recognized their armor. They were not rebels fighting for freedom. They were pirates, mercenaries. They called themselves the Black Tide, and they killed for money. Someone had paid them to attack the summit. Someone had paid them to cause chaos. And now, separated from her guards, Commander Lyra Vance was about to become their victim. Lyra reached for her weapon. Her hand touched an empty holster. She looked down. Her pistol was gone. It must have fallen during the explosion. The pirates saw this and laughed. The leader stepped forward. He was huge, made even bigger by his armor. His voice was rough and ugly through the helmet speaker. "The Admiral's daughter," he said. "You will make a good hostage. Or a good corpse. We will see which pays better." Lyra stood straight. She did not beg. She did not cry. Whatever her faults, she was still a Vance, and the Vances did not show fear. But Daniel could see her hands shaking, just slightly. He was 20 meters away, hidden in the shadows and the smoke. He was supposed to stay hidden. He was supposed to observe and report, not act. If he revealed himself now, his mission would be over. Months of work would be wasted. The Resistance would lose its best chance to place someone close to the noble families. Daniel thought about all of this. Then he stepped out of the shadows and walked toward the pirates. "Leave her alone," he said. His voice was calm. His hands were empty. He still wore his gray jumpsuit, still looked like nothing more than a frightened servant. The pirates looked at him and laughed again. "Run away, little man," the leader said. "This does not concern you." Daniel kept walking. "I said leave her alone." The leader raised his weapon. "Last chance, fool." Daniel smiled. It was a small smile, but it changed his entire face. Suddenly, he did not look like a servant anymore. He looked like something dangerous. "No," Daniel said softly. "This is your last chance." And then he moved. Lyra Vance had been trained in combat since she was 12 years old. She had studied with the best teachers money could buy. She had practiced with weapons and without them. She thought she understood what it meant to fight. She was wrong. Daniel Cole moved like nothing she had ever seen. He did not run toward the pirates. He flowed. His body bent and twisted in ways that seemed impossible. One moment he was 5 meters away. The next moment he was among them. The first pirate raised his weapon to fire. Daniel's hand shot out and grabbed the barrel, pushing it aside. The shot went wide, hitting the ceiling. In the same motion, Daniel's other hand struck the pirate's throat. The man fell without a sound. The second pirate tried to swing his rifle like a club. Daniel ducked under the swing, stepped inside the man's guard, and hit him 3 times in the chest. The sounds were sharp and quick. The pirate's armor cracked. He stumbled backward and collapsed. The leader roared and charged. He was twice Daniel's size, covered in heavy armor, strong enough to crush a normal man with his bare hands. He swung a massive fist at Daniel's head. Daniel was not there. He had moved to the side, smooth and quick like water flowing around a stone. His foot swept the leader's legs. The big man fell forward. Before he could rise, Daniel's elbow came down on the back of his neck. The fight was over in less than 10 seconds. Lyra stood frozen, her back against the wall, her eyes wide. Smoke drifted through the corridor. Alarms still screamed in the distance. 3 armored pirates lay on the ground, defeated by a man in a cleaning uniform. Daniel turned to face her. For the first time, she really looked at him. His eyes were clear and sharp, like polished metal. His body was relaxed, but ready, like a coiled spring. There was no fear in him, no hesitation. "Commander Vance," he said. His voice was calm, as if he had just finished a simple task. "Are you injured?" Lyra opened her mouth. No words came out. She closed it and tried again. "Who are you?" Daniel did not answer. He walked to the fallen pirates and quickly searched their bodies. He took a pistol from one of them and checked its power level. Then he looked back at Lyra. "We need to move. These are not the only attackers. The station is under assault. I asked you a question." Lyra's voice found its strength. She was a commander, not a frightened child. "Who are you? What are you?" Daniel's expression did not change. "I am someone who is trying to keep you alive. Now please, Commander, we need to go." Another explosion shook the station. The ceiling cracked above them, and a piece of crystal fell, shattering on the floor just a few meters away. Lyra made a decision. Questions could wait. Survival came first. "Lead the way," she said. Daniel nodded and moved down the corridor, stepping over the unconscious pirates. Lyra followed. Her legs felt weak, but she forced them to work. She was a Vance. She would not show weakness, not even now. They moved through the damaged station. Everywhere there was chaos. Fires burned in some sections. Water poured from broken pipes in others. Bodies lay on the ground, some moving, some still. The beautiful crystal walls were cracked and stained with smoke. Daniel navigated through the destruction like he had a map in his mind. He seemed to know which corridors were safe and which were dangerous. When guards appeared, he pulled Lyra into shadows until they passed. When pirates appeared, he dealt with them quickly and quietly. Lyra watched him fight 3 more times. Each time, she learned something new. He did not use strength. He used speed and precision. He hit exactly where he needed to hit, no more, no less. His movements were beautiful in a terrible way. "You are not a deckhand," she said, as they paused to catch their breath in a small storage room. "No," Daniel admitted. "I'm not." "Then what are you?" He looked at her for a long moment. She could see him thinking, calculating, deciding how much to tell. "I am a soldier," he finally said. "A real soldier. Not the kind who wears medals and gives speeches. The kind who does the work that nobody sees." "For whom?" "For humanity." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. "The Resistance." Daniel did not deny it. "We have many names. What matters is that we have not forgotten what it means to be free. Some humans have grown comfortable in their chains. Others still remember what we lost." "My family." "Your family made a choice," Daniel interrupted. His voice was not angry, just honest. "They chose power over freedom. They chose comfort over honor. I do not blame them. Many would make the same choice. Then why are you here? Why save me?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. "Because choices can be unmade. Because people can change. I was sent to watch you, Commander. To learn who you really are beneath all that training and polish." Lyra felt her face grow hot. She was not sure if it was anger or shame. "And what have you learned?" "I am still learning." More explosions echoed in the distance. Daniel stood and checked the corridor outside. Clear. He motioned for Lyra to follow. They continued through the station. Lyra had many more questions, but there was no time to ask them. The pirates were everywhere. The station's security forces were overwhelmed. It seemed like the entire Black Tide organization had come to Nexus Station. Hundreds of killers spreading through the structure like poison through blood. "Why are they here?" Lyra asked as they ran. "This is just a diplomatic summit. There is nothing worth stealing." "There is always something worth stealing," Daniel said. "Power, information, important prisoners." He glanced at her. "You, for example. The daughter of Admiral Vance would be very valuable." "Is that why you saved me?" "To use me as your own prisoner." Daniel shook his head. "If I wanted to capture you, I would not have revealed myself. I would have waited until the pirates took you and then rescued you later when you were frightened and grateful. That would have been the smart play. Then why?" He stopped and faced her. Behind him, through a cracked window, she could see the burning lights of the station and the cold stars beyond. "Because when I saw those men surrounding you, something inside me refused to wait. I could not stand by and watch them hurt you, even if it ruined everything I had worked for." Lyra stared at him. For a moment, she forgot about the chaos around them. She forgot about the pirates and the explosions and her missing guards. All she could see was this strange man in his gray jumpsuit, looking at her with eyes that held no lies. "You are either very foolish," she said slowly, "or very good, perhaps both." A small smile crossed his face. "Now come. The Grand Hall is nearby. If we can reach it, we can find safety. The Ascended will protect anyone inside." They moved again. The corridors became more familiar. Lyra recognized the path to the Grand Hall, though now it was filled with smoke and debris. They were close. They turned a final corner and stopped. The entrance to the Grand Hall was blocked. Not by rubble, but by men. 20 pirates stood in formation, their weapons ready. And at their head stood a figure that made Lyra's blood turn cold. He was massive, even bigger than the pirate leader Daniel had defeated earlier. But it was not his size that frightened her. It was his body. Half of it was machine. His left arm was a cannon. His right eye glowed red with targeting systems. His legs were made of metal that whirred and clicked as he moved. Victor Graves, the warlord of the Black Tide, the most feared pirate in the galaxy. He saw them and smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Well, well," he said. His voice was deep and scratchy, partly human and partly machine. The little princess and her guard dog. I was wondering when you would arrive. Daniel stepped forward, putting himself between Lyra and the warlord. Let us pass, Graves. Victor laughed. You know my name. I am flattered. But no, I think I will not let you pass. I think I will take the princess and sell her to the highest bidder. And you, brave little guard dog, I will kill slowly. He raised his cannon arm. It began to glow with building power. Unless you prefer to run. I will give you 5 seconds. Daniel did not run. Commander, he said, quietly without turning around. Behind me is a side entrance to the hall. When I move, you go through that door. Do not stop. Do not look back. I will not leave you. You will. Because there is something inside that hall that is worth more than my life. Something that might change everything. You need to reach it. What are you talking about? Daniel smiled, though she could not see it. The blade, Commander. Something tells me you should try to lift it. And then, before she could argue, he charged at Victor Graves and his army of pirates. Daniel moved faster than any human should be able to move. He ran straight at Victor Graves, dodging the first blast from the warlord's cannon arm by dropping into a slide across the crystal floor. The energy beam passed over his head, close enough to burn the air. He came up swinging. His stolen pistol fired 3 times. 2 pirates fell. The others scattered, trying to get clear shots at this small man who had suddenly become a storm of violence. Lyra watched for one frozen moment. Then she remembered his words. The door. The blade. She turned and ran Dot behind her. She heard the sounds of battle. Gunfire. Shouts. The whine of Victor's cannon charging and firing again. She wanted to look back. She wanted to help. But Daniel had told her to run, and something in his voice had made her believe it was important. The side entrance was hidden behind a fallen column. Lyra squeezed through the gap and found herself inside the grand hall. It was empty now, or nearly so. The delegates had fled during the attack. A few bodies lay on the floor, victims of the chaos. The beautiful ceiling with its artificial clouds was cracked, and pieces of crystal fell like frozen rain. And in the center of the hall, on its black pedestal, the blade of sovereignty stood waiting. Lyra walked toward it. Her boots crunched on broken crystal. Her heart beat loud in her ears. She did not know why Daniel had told her to come here. She did not know why he thought she should try to lift it. The blade was just a symbol, a trick. No one had ever moved it. Why would she be any different? But something pulled her forward. Some feeling she could not name. Behind her, through the walls, she heard a massive crash. A scream of pain that might have been Daniel. She stopped and turned toward the sound. No, she had to keep going. He had sacrificed himself to give her this chance. She could not waste it. She reached the pedestal. The blade was even more beautiful up close. The dark metal seemed to breathe. The tiny stars inside it pulsed with light. And the singing she had felt before was stronger now, vibrating in her bones. Slowly, Lyra reached out her hand. Outside the hall, Daniel was losing. He had taken down 8 pirates. 8 men in heavy armor, armed with military-grade weapons. He had done it with nothing but a pistol and his hands. But Victor Graves was not like the others. The warlord was a monster of metal and flesh. Every time Daniel hit him, it was like punching a wall. Every time Daniel dodged, Victor's targeting systems learned and adjusted. The cannon arm fired again and again, each shot coming closer. Daniel's body was covered in burns and cuts. His gray jumpsuit was torn and stained with blood. He was running out of strength. Victor grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the ground. Daniel kicked at the warlord's chest, but his legs hit metal and accomplished nothing. "You fight well for a human," Victor said. His red eye glowed as he studied Daniel's face. Who trained you? The Resistance has not produced warriors like you before. Daniel did not answer. He could barely breathe. Victor squeezed harder. No matter. You will die like all the others. Brave and useless. He threw Daniel across the corridor. Daniel hit the wall and fell to the ground. Pain exploded through his body. He tried to rise, but his arms would not obey. Victor walked toward him slowly. The remaining pirates watched from behind, no longer laughing. They had seen what this small man could do. They respected him now, even as their leader prepared to kill him. Any last words, guard dog? Daniel looked up at the warlord. Beyond Victor, through the cracked walls, he could see a sliver of the grand hall. He could see the pedestal. He could see Lyra, her hand reaching for the blade. Yes, Daniel said, and he smiled despite the pain. Look behind you. Victor laughed. The oldest trick in the light exploded from the grand hall. Inside the hall, Lyra's fingers touched the handle of the blade. It was cold. Colder than ice. Colder than space itself. The cold shot up her arm and into her chest, squeezing her heart like a frozen hand. She tried to lift, but the blade would not move. It was heavier than a mountain, heavier than a planet. All the weight of 3,000 years pressed down on it. And she was just one woman, one small, weak human woman. The legends were true. She was not worthy. She almost let go. But then she heard Daniel scream. The sound cut through the walls, through the cold, through her own despair. He was dying out there. Dying because he had chosen to save her. Dying because something inside him had refused to watch her be taken by monsters. A stranger. A servant. A man she had never noticed, never thanked, never treated as anything but invisible. And he was dying for her. Something inside Lyra broke, not her strength. Not her will. Something else. Something that had been built over years of training and privilege and cold, noble pride. The wall between her and everyone below her station. The blindness that had let her walk past suffering without seeing it. That wall shattered. And in its place, something new was born. Something hot and fierce and desperately human. She was not lifting the blade for herself. She was not lifting it for power or glory or to prove she was worthy. She was lifting it for him. For Daniel. For the man who had seen something in her worth saving. The blade screamed. Light poured from the dark metal, white and blinding. The tiny stars inside it exploded into brilliance. The singing became a roar that shook the entire station, and the blade rose. Lyra lifted it above her head. It was weightless now, light as a feather, an extension of her arm, her will, her heart. Power flooded through her, ancient and vast and completely overwhelming. She understood now. The blade had never cared about strength or skill or birth. It cared about one thing only. Sacrifice. The willingness to give everything for someone else. To live not for yourself, but for another. For 3,000 years, beings had tried to lift the blade with ambition in their hearts, with desire for power, with pride and greed and selfishness. They had all failed. Lyra succeeded because in that moment, she did not care about herself at all. She only cared about saving one man who had shown her what true courage looked like. The walls of the grand hall exploded outward. Lyra walked through the rubble, the blade burning in her hands, light pouring from her eyes. Victor Graves turned to face her. For the first time, the warlord looked afraid. Impossible, he whispered. No human has ever I am human, Lyra said. Her voice was her own, and also something more. The blade was speaking through her, ancient and terrible. I am human, and I am done serving. She walked toward him. The remaining pirates ran. They were killers and thieves, but they were not stupid. They could feel the power radiating from this woman. They knew death when they saw it. Victor did not run. He raised his cannon arm and fired. The beam hit Lyra in the chest. She did not slow down. The energy splashed against her like water against stone. The blade absorbed it, drank it, grew brighter. Victor fired again. And again. Nothing worked. Lyra reached him. She looked up into his red eye, into the face of the monster who had hurt the man she was trying to save. 3,000 years, she said. Your kind has ruled through fear and fire. Today it ends. She swung the blade. It cut through Victor's cannon arm like the arm was made of paper. It cut through his metal legs, through his armored chest, through everything he had built to make himself invincible. The warlord fell in pieces. Lyra stood over him, breathing hard. The light from the blade began to fade. The power began to drain away. She was just a woman again, tired and shaking. But the blade was still in her hand. She turned and saw Daniel lying against the wall. He was badly hurt, but his eyes were open. He was looking at her with an expression she had never seen before. It was awe. You did it, he whispered. You actually did it. Lyra walked to him and knelt by his side. The blade rested on the floor beside her, still humming softly. You knew, she said. You knew I could lift it. Daniel shook his head weakly. I hoped. I was not certain. Why me? He reached up and touched her face. His hand was covered in blood, but she did not pull away. Because when I watched you for 3 months, I saw something. A hand that almost turned to help a servant. A look of boredom at speeches about power. A woman who was playing a role she did not believe in. He coughed. Blood appeared on his lips. I saw a human being trapped inside a noble's uniform. And I thought, if anyone could remember what humanity is supposed to be, it might be you. Lyra felt tears running down her cheeks. She did not try to stop them. Stay with me, she said. Help is coming. Daniel smiled. Always giving orders. Yes, and you will obey. He laughed and then winced in pain. But he kept his eyes on hers. Yes, Commander, he said. I believe I will. Around them, the station continued to burn. But in the grand hall, beside the empty pedestal where the blade had stood for 3,000 years, a new light was beginning to dawn. The light of humanity, finally remembering who they were meant to be. The battle for Nexus Station ended that night. When word spread that the blade of sovereignty had been lifted, everything changed. The pirates stopped fighting and tried to flee. The station's security forces found new courage and pushed back. The delegates who had hidden during the attack emerged from their shelters and stared at the burning sky with wonder and fear. A human had lifted the blade for the first time in 3,000 years. The ancient weapon had chosen someone, and that someone was not an Ascended. Lyra stayed with Daniel until the medical teams arrived. She held his hand as they placed him on a floating stretcher. She walked beside him as they carried him through the damaged corridors to the medical bay. She refused to leave his side, even when officers from her own ship came looking for her. Commander Vance, one of them said nervously. Your father has sent messages. He demands to know. Tell him I am busy, Lyra said. Her voice was ice and steel. Tell him his daughter has just changed the history of the galaxy. He can wait. The officer went pale and retreated. Daniel watched this with tired amusement. The doctors had stabilized him, but he was weak and needed rest. You are going to have problems with your family, he said softly. Lyra looked down at him. The blade hung at her waist now, attached to a simple belt she had found in the rubble. It felt natural there, like it had always belonged to her. My family made their choices, she said. Now I am making mine. Daniel smiled. And what choice is that? I have not decided yet, but I know it will be different from theirs. The medical team asked Lyra to leave so they could work on Daniel. She did not want to go, but she understood. She touched his face one more time, then walked out of the medical bay. The corridor outside was crowded with people. Humans and aliens alike stopped and stared as she passed. They looked at the blade at her waist. They whispered to each other in a dozen different languages. Lyra kept walking. She found her way to a viewing window. Outside, she could see the damage to the station. Entire sections were dark, where fires had burned out the power systems. Rescue ships flew back and forth, tiny lights against the vast darkness of space. You are the one who lifted it. Lyra turned. An Ascended stood behind her, its crystal body pulsing with soft blue light. She had not heard it approach. They never made sounds when they moved. Yes, she said. There was no point in lying. The Ascended was silent for a long moment. Lyra could not read its expression, if it even had one. But she felt the weight of its attention, ancient and deep. We have waited a long time for this, the Ascended finally said. Lyra frowned. Waited? You wanted someone to lift the blade? Yes. 3,000 years we have waited. 3,000 years we have tested the beings of this galaxy, watching, hoping, searching for the one who could pass our trial. I do not understand. The blade was supposed to prove your right to rule. The Ascended made a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been something else entirely. No, the blade was supposed to find someone worthy of ending our rule. Lyra's heart seemed to stop in her chest. She stared at the towering crystal being, trying to understand what she was hearing. We conquered your galaxy, the Ascended continued. We took control of 100 worlds. But we did not do it for power. We did it because we had to. Had to? There was a threat. Something coming from the darkness beyond the stars. Something that destroyed our own civilization long ago. We barely survived. We spent millions of years rebuilding, preparing, searching for others who could stand against what is coming. The Ascended's light pulsed brighter. When we found your galaxy, we saw potential. Many species, many worlds, but all of them were divided, fighting each other, wasting their strength on petty wars. So we conquered them. We forced them to work together. We gave them peace, even if they did not want it. You made us slaves, Lyra said. Yes, we made you safe. Safety and freedom are often enemies of each other. Lyra thought about this. She did not agree with what the Ascended had done, but she was beginning to understand their reasons. The blade, she said. What does it really mean? It is a test. The threat that is coming cannot be defeated by strength alone. It cannot be defeated by armies or weapons or technology. It can only be defeated by something that our people never had. Something that your kind possesses in abundance. What is that? The Ascended leaned closer. Its voice became soft, almost gentle. The willingness to die for each other. The love that makes you throw yourselves in front of danger to save someone you barely know. The fire that burns inside you when someone you care about is threatened. It paused. We call it the human spark. It is why we feared you. It is why we conquered you. And it is why we have been searching for a human worthy to lift the blade. Lyra looked down at the weapon at her waist. The dark metal still hummed softly. The tiny stars inside it still pulsed with light. What happens now? She asked. Now we keep our promise. The one who lifts the blade earns the right to lead. Your people are no longer servants. They are partners, allies. Soon you will need to be. Because of the threat. Yes, it is closer than you know. We have been watching the edges of the galaxy. Something is moving there. Something hungry and old and terrible beyond description. The Ascended straightened, and its light grew dim. Prepare your people, Lyra Vance. Train them. Unite them. Because when the darkness comes, the human spark may be the only light that can push it back. It turned and walked away. Its crystal footsteps finally making sound. clicking softly on the floor. Lyra watched it go. Then she looked out the window again, at the stars burning in the endless night. Somewhere out there, beyond the light, something was waiting, but humanity would be ready. 3 months later, Lyra stood in the new Terran embassy on Earth. It was the first human building constructed on their home planet in 200 years. The Ascended had given them back their world. They had given them back their ships, their armies, their freedom. It still felt like a dream. The blade of sovereignty hung on the wall behind her desk. She looked at it every day. It reminded her of who she was now, who she had become. A door opened, and James Ward walked in. That was his real name, not Daniel Cole. He had told her everything during his recovery. His true identity, his mission. The Terran resistance that had been fighting in the shadows for decades. He still walked with a slight limp from his injuries, but he was strong and healthy. He wore a clean uniform now, white and gold like hers. The colors of a free humanity. "Admiral Vance," he said, a small smile on his face. Lyra shook her head. "That title still feels strange. You earned it. You lifted the blade. You changed everything." "We changed everything," she corrected him. "I could not have done it without you." James walked to the window and looked out at the earth below. Green continents, blue oceans, white clouds drifting in a real sky. "It is beautiful," he said. "I grew up hearing stories about Earth. I never thought I would see it." Lyra walked to stand beside him. Their shoulders touched. "There is still so much work to do," she said. "The Ascended warned me about what is coming. We have to build an army. We have to build an army. We have to prepare our people. We have to convince them that the former slaves can become the saviors of the galaxy. Do you think we can do it?" Lyra thought about the question. She thought about everything that had happened. The attack on the station. Daniel stepping out of the shadows to save her. The impossible weight of the blade in her hands. The moment she had lifted it, not for herself, but for the man bleeding on the floor. "Yes," she said. "I think we can. Because that is what humans do. We fight for each other. We sacrifice for each other. We find strength we did not know we had when someone we love is in danger." She took James's hand. He looked at her with the same expression he had worn that night in the Grand Hall. That look of awe and respect and something deeper. "The Ascended conquered us because they feared what we could become." Lyra continued. "They knew that if we ever stopped fighting each other and started working together, we would be unstoppable. Now that is exactly what we are going to do. And when the darkness comes?" Lyra smiled. It was not a gentle smile. It was the smile of a woman who had lifted an ancient weapon and cut down a warlord. The smile of someone who had found her purpose. When the darkness comes, it will learn what the Ascended learned. What Victor Graves learned. What everyone who underestimates humanity eventually learns. She looked out at the stars, at the vast and dangerous galaxy that was now hers to protect. Humans do not give up. Humans do not surrender. And when you threaten someone we love, we will move mountains and burn worlds and lift weapons that have been still for 3,000 years. James squeezed her hand. "That," he said softly, "is exactly what I was hoping to hear." Together, they stood at the window and watched the sun rise over Earth. It was the dawn of a new era. The era of humanity. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the stars, something ancient and terrible felt a flicker of fear for the first time in a million years. The humans were coming, and they were not going to stop until the galaxy was safe.